this area to justify the cost of these projects. So at the end of the day, it comes down to financing. We're a private company. The money that goes into building these projects in Isabella County, we took out a construction loan of more than $600 million. That allowed us to pay for the turbines, that allowed us to bring in the cranes, that allowed us to go through the construction process, to pay for the road improvements, to pay for all the stuff that goes into building these projects. That's private investment. That's private capital that we borrowed from lenders. Not just one bank, but several banks. And I promise you, when you're trying to borrow that kind of money, that blows my mind, they don't just give it to you. You got to be able to prove. You got to be able to show your work like math class. Here's what we're saying, and this is bankable information. So we don't get Uncle Sam doesn't write us a check. I can make a joke and say my job would be a heck of a lot easier if Uncle Sam wrote me a check or the state of Michigan wrote me a check to be here today, but they don't. It's all private investment. It's only after the hundreds of millions of dollars are spent privately to build a project, and only if and after the project's up and running and producing power, then there's a tax credit that is set to expire. Congress is set for this tax credit to expire, but there's a tax credit that allows us to pay down our debt just a little bit. It's a couple cents per kilowatt hour. So based on the amount of power that we produce over the course of an entire year, there's a credit that we can get to pay out the tax. There's all new investment, all private money that goes into the project. And when the wind tax expires, if it expires with Congress, who knows what the legislature and Congress is going to do, but if and when it expires, then wind industry or wind energy will be the only energy, utility scale energy generation source, coal, nukes, hydroelectric, you name it, the only one of its kind to have zero federal subsidy of any kind. But it is a credit, it's not an upfront, no one's writing a check to do it. So,
I got a question for that lady over here. Is this lady complaining about them lights on that tower on Holland Lake Road?
No, I was just asking if that's where they're putting the tower. Are they going to put it that close to someone else's farmland?
Oh,
Like,
okay.
her fence is right there, and it's literally 10 feet from it.
Yeah, okay, I see. Yeah, because I've got electric fencer in my barn and my cattle. It doesn't affect them, and it blinks all the time.
That's fine, but if the turbine's going to be that close to the fence, is it going to get ice on it? Is it going to fling it after animals? Who knows?
I don't.
yeah, the turbine would not go there. We'd have a bigger setback from there.
Right, it was very
Life expectancy of a turbine, 20 to 30 years. Now, there's decommissioning, which should absolutely be, it's another thing that I know has been discussed, is a decommissioning agreement. There should absolutely be a decommissioning agreement in anybody's ordinance. And so, I know the township here would have a decommissioning agreement, which means there's money up front that we pay for up front in the form of a bond or a letter of credit or something, so that decommissioning, taking the turbines down, don't cost the community, the taxpayers, the landowner any money. That should come out of our pocket and or the utility or whoever owns the project.
What's the life expectancy of them towers?
About 20 to 30 years. Now the alternative is if it's not decommissioned, then probably what would happen here, because we have a lease, probably what would happen is maybe after X number of years, whatever that could be, let's say 20. Let's say 20 years, well, we might come in and replace the blades or do what we call is repowering. And so you replace the blades, you may replace the gearbox. It's like any piece of equipment, and they're pretty smart machines. There's a ton of sensors in there to tell us what's going on. Is there ice accumulation on the blade? They can shut themselves off. There's a lot of data that these things collect. So we know if there's issues, and there'll be technicians working in the community. But they either get repowered, which means make some improvements, or they get decommissioned, which means you pull them out.
What happens to the blades?
You guys use identified?
Sorry?
Do you use identified? I think it's called identified.
I'm not sure.
The camera system on top of this identifies an eagle and shuts it down.
No, I'm not sure. I don't know a lot about that system, but it's probably not something that we would do.
Are you willing to put them in? And are you willing to put money in escrow for the decommissioning towers on here? An escrow account.
Well, and that's there'll be money up front for decommissioning.
These Tesla windmills we're having put up here, we're going to be here for a while. Are we worrying about something right now? Like data's even gathered,
Sale
we're
bill.
eligible to have windmills here?
Tax
I
bill.
mean,
It's-
two years before they're ever gonna come.
Tax
If they come, period, are we even enough data that's going to allow them to be here? If there's enough wind to do that. My second question is, if they do come, if there is enough wind and they do come, who builds these? Do we bring our family into these jobs, or do we have people come from out of state, out of town, into our community and set these up? Where does the workforce come from?
Depends. It could be a diverse workforce. It would go through a private bid. It would go through an RFP process. This calendar year, there's over $5+ billion being spent on wind projects across the country right now. So people who build these projects, their dance card is pretty full. In 2023, the market structure is likely to be different, but yeah, you've got companies, and I can't sit here today and tell you who would build it, but you would have companies like Bark Mallow, who's a Michigan contractor. There's a number of companies that would do this type of work. Local, a lot of it would be the aggregate material, the electrical stuff would be likely done by local folks. It makes sense. The concrete would become as locally as possible. MJ Electric is doing a good job for us right now over in East Bella County. They're a Michigan-based electrical, 100% IBEW workforce. Fisher Contractors out of Mount Pleasant. They've got a union workforce. They're doing all the civil work, all the roads. They're doing a pretty good job. Concrete's being sourced locally, so hard to say, but it would be likely
Beneficial
coming
to
in.
our community if we were using all those resources from our people.
Short term.
I agree.
How about employment? Do those companies come in and hire our workers from here that are unemployed?
I've got a couple people placing the job in Isabella County.
It's just me, or do these sound like shill questions? Did you sign all these?
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
Yeah, I thought so. Those sound like shill questions. I've got a statement I'd like to make. I'm going to read it because I'm not nearly as smooth of a talker as this guy, so please forgive me. I think I can squeeze it in under 3 minutes. I'm Eric Becko. I've been a tax-paying member of this community for over 4 years. I'm a little embarrassed to admit this, but I've never taken much interest in local politics until last week. I think that's because I assumed that the people who sat on the board had deep community ties and would never put themselves above the good of the community. How naive of me. There are 2 separate but related topics I'd like to cover today. First off, I have never in my life felt so betrayed by our representative form of government as I do right now, and that's really saying something in this day and age. By now, it's common knowledge that Jed Welder has been financially compromised in his duties as board trustee to such an extent that Michigan Township Association attorneys have advised that he must be recused in all manners regarding wind turbine development in Sidney Township, and that's why he's sitting somewhere over there. I call on you to say that is not enough. As a concerned citizen learning of the impending invasion of big wind developers into our quiet community, my wife and I created a Facebook group to act as an open forum welcoming all points of view regarding this matter so that we could have a chance to talk about the future of our community and learn more about this matter before it was rammed through into ordinance without anyone really knowing about it. Jed was openly welcomed into this group and as far as I know is still a member with the ability to defend his actions or express his point of view at any time. However, despite the many pleas from his constituents, Jed did not embrace this opportunity.
That's what this meeting's for, by the way.
Your guy had a chance to talk. Can I talk?
Sure, go ahead, please.
Thanks. Instead, as the creators of the discussion forum, he chose to try and bully and intimidate my wife and I. Jed owns the property across the street from our home, along with many, many other parcels in this township. And in the booklet, in the packets in front of the board members, I show photos of Jed coming to my home and placing pro-big wind yard signs on the road by my home, then taking it one step further by going out of his way to get as close as he could to our house and placed a single pinwheel, no doubt representing the wind turbine he will place next to our home as a threat if he gets his way. These petty, self-serving, juvenile antics and obvious lack of judgment are the reason that I no longer trust Jed to make any decisions regarding the future of Sidney Township from a board seat. I am hereby calling on Jed Welder to resign as board trustee from Sidney Township. With that being said, I do not want the shenanigans of this man to detract from why we are all really gathered here today, and that is the industrialization of our charming little rustic community via big wind development. I know that Jed and these slick professional salesmen at Apex have had a monopoly on the information provided to the board up to this time, but as a citizen of Sidney Township, I would like to change that. In the manila envelopes I have provided to each board member, they will find the foundations for such information, and anyone looking at it can quickly see the sales pitch of Big Wind quickly falls apart. Within it you will find a basic fact sheet calling out the negatives of wind turbines, including but not limited to the loss of property sale value, trespass zoning, shadow flicker, and health concerns. There are also news articles outlining how tax benefits to participating counties and townships are not as they seem initially. Ultimately, I realize that today's meeting is not the forum to deep dive into the details of wind turbine ordinance. What I do want to say is that this place is our home. Sidney Township is not comprised of desolate cornfields where you can build a towering 600-foot wind turbine without anyone noticing. For the majority of our township, you cannot drive more than 1/8 of a mile without passing someone's home. People live here. Nobody has the right to cast a flickering shadow that blots out the sun intermittently on our homes and property. Nor do they have the right to destroy the peace and serenity of nature that our lifestyle here. We do not want these things in our township, plain and simple. I call on you as board members to show your fellow residents of the community the compassion and integrity that we hope you have. Please say no to these things. Write an impossible ordinance for wind turbine placement, and let's all get back to living our lives in peace. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Can you repeat your name, please?
Eric Benko.
Thank you.
May I please say something?
Yes.
I wrote a little something because this really affects my family. My name is Rebecca Murray. My husband, Andrew, and I have 3 children. Peter is 5, Sully's 3, and Kit just turned 1 today. We're fairly new to the area. We moved to West Holland Lake Road 2 years ago. And Jed Walker owns the land around ours. And he's been very kind and very welcoming to us, and we really appreciate that very much. We realize that the farmers in this area own this land, and we respect that, but we also want to stand up and fight for the dream that brought us to Sidney in the first place. Our farm we bought is the culmination of a dream 30 years in the making. My husband and I grew up in the city, and separately, since we were children, dreamed about living in the countryside and owning a farm someday. After we married, we bought a home in the inner city of Grand Rapids and saved money, all while searching for our perfect farm. After 5 years of looking, putting in offers, and having them fall through, we found our farm on West Holland Lake Road. The beauty of the rolling land and the peace and the quiet have been an absolute blessing from the Lord, and the kind of place that we envisioned for our kids to grow up. We spend every evening, weather permitting, out near our west pasture, playing with our kids and farm animals and watching the sunset. It truly is a dream come true. We agreed when we were contemplating buying here that it's worth the hour and 20-minute commute to work from Andrew, my husband, to be able to live like this. You can imagine our absolute heartbreak hearing that wind turbines are being planned for this area. Wind turbines would forever change the landscape of Sidney. We believe the field around our home on West Holland Lake Road and Grove is being considered. It's not a huge field, and we feel like the turbine would literally be on top of us. The beauty and the peace, we think, is being taken away from us so that others can profit, and it makes us feel sick. We cannot imagine having a wind turbine towering over our home. The noise and the flashing lights would be devastating to our quality of life. Our dream of our forever farm, living in the peace of the countryside, would become a nightmare if this moves forward. If we ever, for any reason, needed to sell, who would even buy our home with a massive wind turbine looming over it? I know I wouldn't, if we had known about this before we bought, we would never have purchased. Mr. Welder mentioned that these would help the roads, and personally, we would rather drive to our farm on a gravel road than to live with the wind turbines. Putting up a wind turbine near us would be like erecting a skyscraper right next to us. And not just any skyscraper, but a skyscraper that moves, causes noise pollution, and casts strobe light type shadows. We are devastated thinking about this possibility. We need you to realize that your decision about passing this through, it negatively affects many people. Our lifelong dream for our family is affected, and the beauty of Sidney, Michigan. Please, we do not want to raise our sons and our daughters under a wind turbine. Thank you.
Of course, when the gentleman came to my house and talked to me about it, I told him the property that I own, and he says, well, if there was one, if we happen to put one on your property, it'd have to be clear back on the other side, and you're looking at probably half a mile. That close to the house. Because we can't put it any closer to a residence than that. And what she's talking about, I don't know if she knows or not, where that tower is, I cannot believe that there would be a wind there by that close to the house.
You're proposing 1250, right, for setback?
From the house?
From a residence, yeah.
1250 feet.
Yep, that's not enough.
That's nowhere near enough.
What's the
danger? Nowhere near enough.
If you want to see one, go to Carson City, go on the back side of the prison, they got one sitting right in the guy's backyard.
We don't have an ordinance even in,
In fact, yeah.
But I just,
so many people and only
I
benefits.
talked to 100 today over in Carson City that hunts right underneath their deer hunt. And he says the only thing I hear is a whoosh, and it's not that bad. And the deer still come around and everything else.
Yes, but please consider that he's
Carson
only
City's
out
not turned on.
time.
Yeah,
Just
no,
like-
well, that's true. I understand what you're
Just
saying.
like consider
Yeah.
this gentleman, use the example of going down the highway and you open your back window and you can hear that thumping, that woo, 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 woo. We've heard it many times going down 131. And yes, it's horrible. But
They don't run all the time though. do
But
they?
consider being under that. When you're down the highway, you roll up your window and in a little bit, it's gone.
You're not gonna be under it.
Consider having that
Lights never
every
shut off.
single day for
Wait a
you.
minute, we got too many talking to a time here.
That's what you have every day.
How long does one of the turbines run a year? How many hours?
It depends on the wind resource, it depends on what's going
On
on.
average.
They tend to blow more, they tend to run more during the winter and less during the summer because it's a windier time during the
I
winter.
thought cold weather affects them to where they don't want to run in the winter. Anything 32 below, the ice builds up. They don't run as well, they're not as efficient.
Well, that depends on a lot of things. I mean, that's a generalization that's not true. They run just fine during the winter.
Well, and if they're running more in the winter, there's no leaves on the trees to even help create
How
a
much does it
barrier.
cost to install one?
That depends. The turbine, I don't know what they're going to cost. I can't tell you what turbine model we're going to use, but
On average.
several $1 million per turbine.
How much does it cost to decommission one?
Less than that.
And then it disposes the blades that you can't, they don't
So,
disintegrate whatsoever, they're non-biodegradable.
yeah,
Do you want them in your backyard?
yeah, I would.
You would?
You got them in your backyard?
Hey, where do you live? We'll go build you one.
Listen, I'm entitled to my opinion, and as are you.
Them wind turbines do not have no effect on animals either.
Yes, they do.
No, they don't.
Equipment is made in the US.
There is no effect with animals.
We gotta keep this under control.